vtubers. You probably have heard of them and their prices. Now, if you're someone from outside the community, you may be thinking, why make something so expensive? And to answer that, I'll have to lead you towards my basement, where I'll peacefully show you how vtubers are born from first-hand experience. This video will be about design and drawing processes. By the way, I'm Sarah and let's get into it. First, before gathering references, vtubers need concepts. But what are concepts exactly? Well, basically the theme, species, and job of a model. It can either be based on you, the person behind the character, or a fictional scene. Jamalbet over here has a great video on vtuber concepts. I'll leave it either on the description below or in a tab up there. Basically, for myself, I chose a sleepy, jet chaotic space core artist. I also chose a concept that matched with who I am and what I'm like. I'm an artist, I like to give this welcoming, relatable, and cozy vibes, while trying to hopefully be fun. And well, myself. Finally, I have an obsession with space ever since I was 6, so space couldn't be left out. I recommend looking for the meaning of the core or aesthetic you're going for. Like space core, which is what I chose, is centered around freedom, escapism, and curiosity, while sleep core is more of relaxation, nostalgia, and dreams. Not quite what I wanted with cozy and reliable. Now, with a concept chosen, we can gather references based on everything we just discussed. I may say it 100 times, but the references are very important. I got hair, clothing, mood, and even rendering references. I use references going from cute girlies with cute outfits on Pinterest to Verena from Genshin Impact, and space. We can't forget space. And to the actual design, she has gone through many changes throughout the years. From a messy red haircut girl to the lazy artist she's today. I feel like these changes have represented a little bit of how I've grown alongside her. But truly, coordinates aside, the most relevant design was this one. Like, she went from an anime student to girl figure, which is me. Currently, she has pajamas, no light hair, but has kept the overall hair shape, drawing glove, and the piercing. Before, I used hearts as a ring shape, but now, I kind of became obsessed with stars. Art shapes I added were a few hearts, clouds to represent the sleepiness, and bows, because bows be cute. I also designed a pen and a controller for something that you could see later in the actual model. Another thing I added on her design is a scar on Hillary, which is based on a scar I have IRL. My mentality when designing is basically, oh, that looks pretty damn cool. I'm gonna steal it now. This was a messy rundown of the design, but now, without further ado, the part that can cost up to 10k, the art itself. Now, if you're new, you may be thinking, well, what's a vtuber? And if you do know, then you can just skip ahead because you're a real one. But for everyone else, a vtuber is a virtual avatar that tracks your IRL movements live. I open my mouth, she opens her mouth. I move to the left, she moves to the left. vtubers come in 3D and 2D. 3D models are 3D, and I have no idea how to make them. 2D models are done in a program called Live 2D. Calling them 2D is a little bit of an oversimplification, because in reality, they're more of a 2.5 thingy. They are made by 2D parts and rigged to look 3D-ish. This type of animations can be seen in shows like Louie and basically any kids animation show. Sketching is very important when making a vtuber model. A little note is that you should use big canvas. I used one of like 2.5 times 6.5k pixels. Also, remember to make sure that your program gets saved to a PSD. Some I know are obviously Photoshop, Iris Paint, and Clip Studio. Even if it fries your device, it's absolutely worth it. In the sketching phase, you decide the pose and the proportions. It's way easier to start with a vtuber from somewhere. I also find it useful to give it base colors, just to have an idea of the final design. I redid this sketch like 3 times because of how perfectionist I was. And now, onto line art. Line art is really made. Line art took around 35 hours over a span of 12 days. Line art was done on Iris because I have a screen there and it's a most trusted process thing ever. First, I tried to make it on Clip Studio, but it looked horrible, and I think my PC hated that so much that I died. In the break between that, I noticed that I could make great line art on Ibis. So I created this hybrid technique where I make line art first on Ibis and then I import it into Clip Studio. But even then, it was still a very trusted process thing. This line art had to be done carefully because any straight lines would make coloring harder. Personally, I really like to pre-cut the model. Cutting means separating the model in layers. When you cut, you think, what would show? And cutting is better when you rig, but as long as you understand rigging and what goes into making a vtuber, you should be pretty good to go. If you want a detailed guide to cutting, I'll leave one here from 𝚝𝚊𝚐𝚜. She explains it way better than I do. And separating more is better. Though you really don't want every part to have an underfill or separate line art than shading. Cutting is way too intuitive and it takes a while to find a sweet spot. Extra note, if you line while separating your parts, be sure to name layers as you go. It may be tedious, but it'll save a lot of work later. Believe me, I've been through absolute hell while cutting. Unlike quote-unquote normal base coloring, this one lays down the base of not only our colors but also our final separation. So this step is very important, but coloring is really boring. So if you're on Clip Studio, then I will give you a little tip that may save you hours and headaches. What we'll be doing is creating another action that first sets the current layer as reference, then duplicates it and gives it a tab color, just to keep things organized. A little extra in settings, turn off renaming copy-pasting, and the reason we do this is because when we merge layers down, it keeps the name of the bottom layer, and the bottom layer is the one without name. So you either do the steps I mentioned manually, which takes a bunch, or you have to name every single layer at the end. The setting a reference layer is so that when you bucket tool, it doesn't feel anything else, only a part you're coloring. If you draw on any other program, then I feel really bad for you. But don't worry, the only outcome will be you hating your life. But after that, we have the actual best part, rendering. When I hit the rendering phase, I was genuinely happy. I thought, yay, rendering for a while. But then, a week passed, and before I knew it, I had spent so long that I just wanted to finish. Heck, I even made a whole new auto action, just so I won't have to hit the damn multiply again. When you render, you also have to think about separation, as you have to render the parts that won't be seen. When I render vtubers, I go all in. I make it gorgeous, because people will be looking at this for a bunch of time, and I don't want people looking at my vtuber and going, oh, she likes the shine, she likes the pizzazz, she doesn't look quite cute. I even rendered some belly muscles and ribcage just in case, though I may not be able to show that on YouTube without Daddy YouTube getting mad. Some shadows, like the shadow under the face or the neck, should be kept separate for a more detailed rig. When it comes to the order in which I did things, I rendered in the same order as I usual rendering. Skin into coloring, into accessories, into hair, and finally the eyes. Though I really wanted to see her with a soul, so I rendered the eyes first, and I really hate doing mouths on vtubers, so the mouth was last. For all the shading process, I can sum it up to I started with an airbrush, creating gradients and formed shadows. Then I used hard edges for all the hard shadows and cast shadows. For shading, I used a gray with a colder or warmer hue than the base to do all the shadows. Finally, I go in with a blue and airbrush it in some slightly bigger shadows. Then with the same airbrush, I choose a more separated version of my shadow on some edges. Really, her has only gotten harder. But basically, I did not add any folds nor hair strands, because I'll make them later with a multiplied layer. Then I add another multiplied layer on top and draw in all the cast shadows and ambient occlusion. Then, to finish with multiplied layers, I add another one, but in this case I draw these weird ovals that then I blend a bit and a hatching based on the direction of the hair. But we're still not done, as we still have to add an overlay screen or add layer with again the most prevalent color in the environment. to the darkest parts of the hair with an airbrush, obviously. After that, in another layer within the last 3 blend modes, we add the skin color fade to the hair and the bangs. The highlights use an overlaid layer based on vibes, and we hatch all through. It was actually in this model that I started hatching, because hatching gives texture and makes rendering look very pretty. Really, thanks to a certain amount of effort that went to this model, it completely changed the way I draw and price my art. The whole thing took more than 100 hours over the span of 3 months. But before I show you the results, as you've made it this far, please consider liking, subscribing and commenting. It really helps a small artist like me, and if you like this piece, also consider commissioning me at the link in the description. But without the way, here's the result. Thanks for staying till the end. If my voice sounded kind of tired, it's because not only am I sick, this is also the second time recording this. Bye! Thanks for watching again.